For what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
I think it is very obvious by the length of the chairman's answer to my question that this has struck a nerve, seeing how the chairman himself says it in his own words from previous times. It is not the chairman's right to decide whether prior hearings are sufficient or the chairman's right to decide whether he thinks they're acceptable or the chairman's right to violate the rules in order to interfere. It is interesting to me that this time has become the issue.
I've made my ruling on the point of order. Does the gentleman wish to appeal the ruling of the chair?
I would like, for the sake of history, I'd like, for the sake of history, the chairman take one more minute.
Does the gentleman wish to appeal the ruling of the chair? Yes or no?
Yes. Obviously, we're on the clock and calendar of impeachment again because the chairman is doing this again.
The appeal of the ruling of the chair is not sustained.
I'd move to table this.
Did you actually call for a vote? How is it not sustained? You didn't call for a vote.
Sustain the point of order.
I sustained the point of order.
I call for an appeal of the ruling of the chair. Now I call for a vote.
I sustained the point. I ruled that the point of order is not well taken.
Well, that's painfully obvious.
Motion to table his appeal.
I've appealed the ruling of the chair.
And I move to table.
The gentleman has appealed the ruling of the chair. The gentlelady has moved to table the appeal of the ruling of the chair. The motion to table is not debatable. All in favor of the motion to table, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
Nope.
The appeal of the motion, the appeal of the ruling of the chair is tabled. We will now proceed to amendments.
Roll call.
The gentleman asked for roll call on the motion to table the appeal of the ruling of the chair. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Nadler?
Aye.
Mr. Nadler votes aye. Ms. Lofgren?
Yes.
Ms. Lofgren votes yes. Ms. Jackson-Lee?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson-Lee votes yes. Mr. Cohen? Aye. Mr. Cohen votes aye. Mr. Johnson of Georgia?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson of Georgia votes aye. Mr. Deutsch?
Aye.
Mr. Deutsch votes aye. Ms. Bass? Aye. Ms. Bass votes aye. Mr. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Richmond votes yes. Mr. Jeffries? Aye. Mr. Jeffries votes aye. Mr. Cicilline?
Aye.
Mr. Cicilline votes aye. Mr. Swalwell?
Aye.
Mr. Swalwell votes aye. Mr. Liu? Mr. Raskin?
Aye.
Mr. Raskin votes aye. Ms. Jayapal? Ms. Jayapal votes aye. Ms. Demings? Ms. Demings votes aye. Mr. Correa?
Aye.
Mr. Correa votes aye. Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon votes aye. Ms. Garcia?
Aye.
Ms. Garcia votes aye. Mr. Neguse?
Aye.
Mr. Neguse votes aye. Ms. McBath?
Aye.
Ms. McBath votes aye. Mr. Stanton?
Aye.
Mr. Stanton votes aye. Ms. Dean?
Aye.
Ms. Dean votes aye. Ms. McCarcel-Powell?
Aye.
Ms. McCarcel-Powell votes aye. Ms. Escobar?
Aye.
Ms. Escobar votes aye. Mr. Collins?
No.
Mr. Collins votes no. Mr. Sensenbrenner? No. Mr. Sensenbrenner votes no. Mr. Shabbat? Mr. Shabbat votes no. Mr. Gomert? Mr. Gomert votes no. Mr. Jordan? Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Buck? Mr. Buck votes no. Mr. Radcliffe? Mr. Radcliffe votes no. Ms. Roby? Ms. Roby votes no. Mr. Gates? Mr. Gates votes no. Mr. Johnson of Louisiana? Mr. Johnson of Louisiana votes no. Mr. Biggs? Mr. Biggs votes no. Mr. McClintock?
No.
Mr. McClintock votes no. Ms. Lesko? Ms. Lesko votes no. Mr. Reschenthaler? Mr. Reschenthaler votes no. Mr. Klein?
No.
Mr. Klein votes no. Mr. Armstrong? No. Mr. Armstrong votes no. Mr. Stubbe? No. Mr. Stubbe votes no.
Has everyone voted who wishes to vote? The clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, there are 23 ayes and 17 noes.
The appeal of the ruling of the chair is tabled. We will now proceed to amendments. The